We'd like to welcome you all to our June 21st, 2018 Town Council meeting, our last meeting for the fiscal year, which is always exciting for us and is lengthy, so thank you all for being here. We will turn the time over right now to Councilmember Taylor to assist us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mayor, thank you. We don't have scouts here tonight, but we have three wonderful recent graduates from Higley High School and Perry, and two of them happen to be Eagle Scouts. So hopefully that works, Mayor. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves real quick and then ask the audience to rise and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance here. But let's hear a little bit of introduction.
Hi, I'm Michael Vicios. I just graduated from Higley High School, like you said. I'm an Eagle Scout. Glad to be here.
I'm Brian Ray. I also graduated from Higley High.
I'm Emily Havey, and I graduated from Perry High School.
Okay, and if the audience will please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor, it's impressive to hear the future plans of each of these, but I will let them know that we always thank people that come and lead us in the pledge with a copy of the Constitution, something that we hold dear, and we'd like to give each of you one of those. Mayor, anything that you would like to add?
Just thank you to each of you and for your contributions to the town, and also we hope that either college or school takes you away, but that you come home to Gilbert and find a great career here and raise your family here. So thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Reverend Judy Cato of Victory AME Church to the podium to offer us an invocation.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Daniels, Vice Mayor Peterson, council members, and all of you here today. I'm thankful for this opportunity to be here today. It was a few months ago when my Gilbert leadership class sat here and did a mock council meeting, but you are dealing today with this is a very real meeting, and you're dealing with very real issues, and so you need to be covered in prayer. So let us pray. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we come before you today, first of all, thanking you for bringing us here to this place at this particular time. We thank you that you have systems and things in place that allow the city to run as it runs and to allow people to lead and to guide it in the direction that you want it to go. And as they go through the agenda items today, Lord, we ask you to guide their decisions, to guide the discussions so that things that are said and things that are done are pleasing to you, Lord. And we ask that anything that is voted on and anything that is decided on today is used for the betterment of the city of Gilbert and its residents, Lord. We thank you that you have us here. We thank you that you've appointed these particular leaders for this particular time. And in the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Cato. We sure appreciate you being here and with us this evening. At this time, the clerk will conduct the roll call.
Mayor Jen Daniels.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Scott Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Eddie Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Victor Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Jordan Ray.
Here.
Councilmember Jared Taylor.
Present.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. We would like to draw your attention at this time to the Heat Relief Network. This is a critical need both in Gilbert but also in our surrounding communities, and we all work together this time of year to ensure that we have what we need: bottled water, hats, light-colored T-shirts, and sunblock. You can donate those both at the Southeast Regional Library, at the Gilbert Community Center, at all of our fire stations, and most of our town offices. So thank you for donating in advance, and we appreciate you helping all those in need. This is a very special presentation that we get to offer this evening, and at this time I'd like to turn it to Vice Mayor Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I have Linda Edwards please come and join me? Linda Edwards is retiring from the town of Gilbert after 17 years of service, but her service hasn't just been as a staff member for the town of Gilbert. Before that, she was on the Planning Commission. My very first night on the Planning Commission, Linda was the chairman of the Planning Commission 18 years ago. Before that, she was on the Design Review Board. And before that, you held positions within the state of Arizona. So that makes you able to retire now with 25 years.
Age of 45.
At the Little white lie on retirement day, but that's okay. Linda, we won't be able to replace you in any way, shape, or form. You know that I presented to you at the Planning Commission a couple weeks ago, and I said it's going to take me a very long time before I can say, call somebody else before I think to call Linda Edwards, because you have been a staple here for as long as I've been here and part of this planning group. So we thank you for all of your time and dedication. You have left an incredible mark on this community, and we thank you for that. And we have a beautiful plaque for you that I didn't bring my glasses down to read, so I'm going to present it to you on behalf of Mayor Daniels, the rest of the town council. Thank you for your service, and ask if we can get a photo with Linda, please.
Sorry, I have one more gift that I'd like to present with Linda from the entire council. Linda, as Vice Mayor Peterson mentioned, your mark is all over the town of Gilbert, and it was especially poignant to me that when I first got on council in 2009, we were going through the Heritage District Design Guidelines, of which you were very much a part of and guiding and leading. And so today I'd like to present you with this press print of the downtown.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you're right.
I'd like to invite Linda's family here. We didn't realize that, of course, there's a whole planning family over there, but also your real family. We all have real families in the town. You'd never know. Yep, you're being summoned by your mom, so, or wife.
Hey, kids. And my favorite attorneys, please. Brennan, Adam, Ed, please. My family. John. These are my very favorite people. When you work here, Rob, you know, when the mayor asked for my family, this really is my family. I mean, I could not do what we do in Gilbert without this family. And I will say that, you know, it's been dynamic. It's been very challenging. It's been furious for the 28 years I've been involved, but I wouldn't change it for anything. So I really feel like this is the team to thank, because this is planning, all of us. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Mayor and Council. And we really could not have done it with, you know, the greatest leaders that we have, our town manager, our mayor, our very special vice mayor, and my boss, Kyle Maris, wherever he is. So, you know, I mean, really, that is my family, and I'm just so thankful for them. So thank you.
Do you want to introduce your real?
Oh, yes, my real family, of course.
Pleasure of being introduced, please.
This is my husband of 43 years, and this is my daughter of 41 years. My grandson and my son-in-law. So we do a lot together. Believe me, I will not be bored. They're just a very, very important part of my life. Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys, for coming. Thanks for coming.
See you, Adam.
At this time, we will move to our communications from citizens. It's my understanding we have one request.
Yes, ma'am. We have Joe Gusick, who would like to speak during communications from citizens. Joe, if you could come down to the front and just give us your city or town of residence, please.
Joe Gusick, Gilbert resident, proud Gilbert resident. Mayor Daniels, fellow town council members, all Gilbert staff, residents, and guests of our beautiful community. As I always say, I'm your lovable, slightly annoying American. I'm your education Lorex. I come here tonight to share a thought and idea with you from the last meeting that I attended. And very rarely, as you know, I keep my mouth quiet. But I wanted to simply share with you something that I noticed. I appreciate each and every one of you for what you do every single year. When money is discussed, sometimes the level of patience gets a little thin. But I really appreciated the efforts this year over the past couple years that you all worked together to be civil and respectful of each other. Respect each other's opinions, respect each other's ideas, and have a proper discussion. That's why I live here in Gilbert. I live here in Gilbert because this is a place where people like to have heated conversations, but in a way that is respectful to everybody in the room. I did want to take a quick shout out and let you know that I really appreciate what Kelly presented last week. For the first time in all the years that I've come, and I always appreciate your bread charts, and I appreciate that they gave you a loaf of bread for the last one time and a whole bunch of graph. But her chart was very telling. For the first time, we broke it out into the operational groups, and we looked at the inflation, and we built it all the way up. And we saw that those groups were fairly running at inflation. What we have to continue to realize is that when growth ends, that's our real challenge. And if we can't project those things, and I will say with this, I'm still looking for that chart, that list of those things that we need. It seems to be the conversations, that's where they seem to get heated. And I just ask you next year, if you'll create that real list so that we know every street corner and everything that needs to be replaced and when it needs to be replaced so that we understand where that money needs to come from in the proper form. So that one day we don't lead to a spot where all of a sudden there needs to be a big pot of gold. And oh, by the way, whoever gets to sit up there, I'm sure that night will not be a pleasant one. And hopefully it won't go till 3:30 in the morning like the GPS meeting that did several years ago. So once again, I thank each and every one of you for all you do. And I will say this to Councilman Peterson, since this is his last year. I always appreciate a different opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. This moves us to the consent agenda. We will accept most of the items in one motion, and I look to Vice Mayor to assist.
Thank you, Mayor. I will give it my best shot, let's say. For the consent agenda, I would move to approve item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5A, 5B, 5D, 7, 8, 9, 10A and B, 11, 12A and B, 13, 14, A and B, 15, A and B, 16, 17, 18, 19, A and B, 21, 22, 24, 27, A and B. I think I got it all.
Mayor Daniels,
Yes.
could we have for item 5D motion to approve as shown in the little notes that you have there?
As amended?
Yeah.
I will amend my motion to include that, Chris.
Mayor, second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion, looks like, there we go. That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Thank you. That moves us, I believe, to agenda item 5C. Thank you. Councilmember Peterson?
Mayor, I wanted to just comment on this one because it's a little different than some of the other items related to Rivian in the past. In particular, I think most people who know me know that I don't support paying private entities to build private buildings for private use, which is what this is. But that's part of it. There's another piece here that is absolutely critical, and that is $11.3 million contribution towards the 202 interchange. And we're all imperfect, but I will just express some disappointment in that item that we're kind of over a barrel. I know we didn't know exactly when the deadline would be or when we'd be done with receiving approval from ADOT on the design. But anytime we're uncertain, I would just suggest, as council members, we have no idea the timeframes in these agreements. And not that I voted to, well, this one I think I did vote to approve. But anyway, we don't know these timeframes. But if staff is uncertain, I suggest that we add 2 or 3 years to our date to make sure that we're not in this position of a lack of clarity to the point of probably losing this incentive if we don't do this amendment tonight. And so $11.3 million is a lot of money. And so for that reason, I'm going to vote for this. But I want to just impress upon us if we can be a little more careful with our timeframes, especially related to an incentive that, or a benefit to the taxpayer that large in the future. So thank you, Mayor, for the moment on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any additional comments from council? Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda items 5C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Thank you. And that moves us to agenda item 6. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've kind of been watching the cost per unique or unique rider per year. Anyway, it's hovered around $4,000 to $5,000 a year for a long time, and I continue to believe that in a new world with all kinds of new transportation opportunities, I think there's better ways to use these dollars. And so I just wanted to pull it because I'm not going to vote to approve it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve 6A and B.
Second.
Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. Agenda item 20 is what I have next. Councilmember.
Mayor, I understand that there's some scope here that wasn't originally included, including the rifle or fire range, if you will. I don't agree with the change and increase in scope, and so I pulled it to vote on it separately. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item 20.
Second.
Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Agenda item 23.
Mayor, this is another one of our fun federal grants, so no need to rehearse all that. Just pulled it to vote separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item 23. Second.
Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Agenda item 25.
Mayor, I'm going to guess there will be others who want to speak on these next two items, 25 and 26, are somewhat related. 25 in particular being some additional repairs or maintenance at Elliott District Park. And Mayor, I met with staff, we all did, and or we've all, I think, at least been briefed on this. And, I was leaning towards this. My concern comes when I look at item 26, which is coming next, realizing that we're going to add almost 23 FTE just to run this park, full-time employees or full-time equivalents, actually. And I started asking about some of the numbers, how that compares to our normal staffing per field or per acre of field. And we're running at about double what we normally do as far as the amount of head count per space area, if you will. And I'm just starting to think this is really kind of Parks and Recs on steroids for me. And I'm not ready to, I would actually, if I had my wish, and I don't know that I'll get it, but I actually like to continue the item so I can get a little more data on, I know there's some opportunities for partnerships here where there's could be some revenue also, and if I could see that the benefits will easily or obviously outweigh the costs, then I might be more open-minded to this, because we do have some field needs, And if we're running it more like any other field that we would, and we don't have to build fields now because we've got some already, and that saves us money on that end. And I mean, I'm open to that concept, but this seems very different from that. And I just don't know that the cost to benefit is going to work out. So with that, Mayor, I pulled them. If forced to vote tonight, I'll be voting against. But if there's time, I'd like to continue a little bit and see if I can get a little more information.
Any other comments from council? Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, thank you. Question for our town manager on this one. So do we not have enough settlement money to cover this versus pulling this from a contingency fund?
Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, no, the settlement money is all being used to make the necessary repairs out at the park. But with these operational dollars, we are working to secure advertising on an ongoing basis to buy down the cost of the operations of the park, in addition to the savings we'll have by even being able to open up these fields for access to our residents and avoid the capital costs of building additional fields in other parkland on the town, and then having to hire staff for those fields as well.
Okay. Because, Mayor, I know we definitely need to fix a lot of the issues there. I was hoping that most of those could be addressed, with the settlement money. And as I've expressed, we're all frustrated with this. It's just a slippery slope, and it just never ends. It's just millions and millions down the tube here. I know we're all frustrated with this. So, the way that I'm inclined to support this, because we do need to fix it. But certainly appreciate what Councilmember Peterson said. If we're going to take this to a gold-plated standard and we're going to, go above and beyond what we have, I know that's more of a discussion for our next item. But if we're allocating more money than we need to just bring it up to what our typical standards are for Crossroads and Freestone, that's what I'm willing to support. Gold plating it, no. But I'm willing to support this as it is with those caveats. And if Patrick, you want to address that?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, if I could maybe just add a little more perspective. Yes, and we can talk more about the repairs at the facility, but they are just to bring the entire facility back up to a safe condition. There were some construction issues and deferred maintenance issues, but it really just brings it back up to a condition that would be on par with our other parks. Doesn't really gold plate the facility per se. And for the staff, again, these staffing levels are, the facility is unique, and as we know, the business model that the town was sold on was flawed in that the operator was not maintaining it and was not reinvesting in it. And so those major category of infrastructure items will always be ours to maintain into the future, regardless of whether we operated it or we found another private sector operator for it. So by us operating it and holding those costs and any profit margin that's built in to a minimum, as well as trying to maximize opportunities to lease out the restaurants to private parties, as well as sell advertising rights to buy down the costs, we actually eliminate, as we've discussed, $16 million in capital costs by not having to build 8 additional fields. And again, for those 8 additional fields, there would be staffing costs tied to those as well. And again, just to emphasize, we'll always have the maintenance costs for this facility going forward, no matter what path we choose. We just felt like this was the path that balanced all the interest the town has with that facility and maximizing its return to our residents.
So based on the education I received on item 25, as far as these additional repairs, it really, the facility is pretty sad in a lot of ways, and it's really unfortunate. This is not going to gold plate anything. That wasn't my concern with 25, and maybe maybe I'm more thinking about 26 here, but I still feel like if I don't know what the end game is, I'm still looking at, and maybe no one else is looking at this, but selling it is always still a possibility in my mind, that if the way that this is going to be run by us is going to end up being overblown, at least from my perspective, then I would still prefer, selling it as an option. I'd hate to start investing into something that we're going to sell. We can let somebody else, invest in it and improve it based on what they think value it should receive. So that was my thought on that. Thank you, Mayor, for the final comment.
Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that when we looked at this facility, when I came on board, 6 or 7 years ago, at that time, this place was really very painfully, you can see the damage, you can see the lack of attention by the partnership that we had, and it was very, very unfortunate that they pretty much let it run itself into the ground. And there's no doubt if proper maintenance and proper funding would have provided a long-term sustainability of the facility, because the facility and the vision of that was fantastic. I mean, it is unique, as Patrick said. But the way I look at it is this, we have in our Parks Master Plan a number of fields that we're going to be looking at doing over the next number of years. And we know as part of our growth in operating those fields, there is going to be a number of staff increases to support that. Now, we didn't expect that this was going to land in our lap this way. It wasn't a long-term plan. We ended the contract, and now we have a facility that we can literally start, in a sense, from scratch and zero. And once this gets up and running next year and we start providing the facilities to our public, there's going to be a requirement for staffing. And Rob, if you can come up and just talk a little bit about, as it relates to our long-term needs, as it relates to the fields, as we have talked about in the Parks Master Plan. This is just going to be a quicker introduction of more fields than what we had planned originally. And if you can just share with us kind of those plans for us here.
Mayor Daniels, Councilmember Cook, the long-term field needs assessment for the department showed that we needed essentially 15 additional youth softball, baseball, and adult softball, a combination of the group over the build-out of Gilbert. Depending on the way we program these fields and the recreational uses, that could reduce that number by up to 8, because even with tournaments on the weekends, the fields would be available to the public and the community Sunday night through Thursday night, including day use. So overall, it drops that to about a combination of 7 of those fields. As the town manager stated earlier, about $2 million per field is what we'd estimate for a baseball, softball, adult softball. So over the course of time, it reduces that full build out by about 8, give or take the weekends. That's the one little, caveat, but those are still going to be local teams playing in these tournaments and local community members.
Thank you. And I know that, from the council perspective, we did get an executive briefing of a potential partner. And again, I think as it relates to getting ready for that potential partner, getting the fields set up, looking at the fields needs assessment. I know we're probably doing this earlier, but again, it is saving the $2 million per field by not planning that for the future. And I think this is just a great opportunity just to reset and get this facility up and running like it should be. I'm looking forward to this being another one of these destinations of our community when it's fully running. And again, I look forward to a great public-private partnership with our potential partner.
Thank you. Councilmember Cook.
Mayor, I have comments on 26. Would you like me to hold those? Or?
Yeah, let's hold those for just a second if that's okay. Councilmember Anderson.
Just to comment that if we follow Joe's logic earlier when we were talking about when construction stops, what happens next in the town. And I think this is a very wise investment on our part. There are things we can do with this that will address that need that we may have in the future. And I think it's time to take action on it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Mayor, just a quick statement. When we went and did a walkthrough just recently as a council, I had been there for probably a year and a half ago with Jacob Ellis, and to go back and do a walkthrough of the grounds, it really is an amazing facility, and it really will fill quite a few needs when we get it to the point that it's really Gilbertized to the point that we want it to be at for use in Gilbert. And the staff's done a great job laying that all out for us, and I agree with what my council members have said, Councilmember Cook and Anderson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll just throw in a couple things. First of all, thank you, Robert, for leading the way on this right now. We appreciate that. The way that we've discussed internally allowing this park, which has been really a public park but run by a private company, so private stipulations involved, and we know what an amazing amenity this could be for the town, but it needs to be available to the public in order for it to be realized as that. And so I'm supportive of these changes because, first of all, we're taking the steps that we need to bring it back up to a Gilbert standard. Second of all, we as a council have already discussed the vision that makes it inspiring for our youth, especially, to play on fields like this. Also, by design, this park will have substantially more cost recovery and more cost recovery options at this park than any of our other park actual facilities. So I do think there's an incredible benefit to even the personnel side, which I know we'll get to. And I just want to make a quick reminder, it wasn't so long ago that our former operator came here and discussed the 85 employees that it took to run the facility. And the fact that our town staff can do it, make it more available to the public, create a different option as it relates to tournament play. And I mean, there really isn't any amenity like this in the Valley. And so to do that with 22.75 employees, that's a substantial difference than what was happening. So I just want to lay that out there. And of course, if we want to do both of these agenda items at the same time, we can. I'm looking to Councilmember Peterson. You want separate? I want it. Okay, let's do separate then. And at this time, we'll entertain a motion on
Mayor,
agenda item 25.
That we approve agenda item 25.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Motion is second. Councilmember Ray?
Yes.
That's a 7-0 vote. Thank you. That moves us to agenda item 26.
Mayor, the repairs there, we'll probably get the value out of, so I went with that. But I'm not ready to support the, I asked the staffing ratios, and I'll just tell you that it's about twice the normal ratios we do on the staffing for these fields. And I'm not sold on that as the concept. You know, I do like the idea that we're going to save building some fields. But we're not going to run them like when we talk about Gilbertized, let's use that word. This isn't going to be what we normally do. It's going to be quite a bit more than that. And so I guess I'm not sold on that piece of it yet. So that's my comment. Thank you, Mayor.
Would you like us, Councilmember Peterson, to go back and rediscuss then the vision? I thought we were all sort of unified as a council on the vision for the facility moving forward. But if we're not, I actually think it would be a benefit to staff to continue that conversation.
Mayor, I still have hope in that vision, but I don't have numbers. Now that I know the staff, we never had staffing numbers till this week. I didn't know what the additional costs were going to be. There's also some additional potential for revenue. So maybe that all works out so obviously in our favor that it's dumb not to do this. I don't know. But I simply don't have that analysis yet. So I would very much appreciate to have some, at least a little time to analyze that side of it. We just haven't had all the pieces until now.
Yeah. Town Manager Banders, would that be acceptable if we delayed this portion of the vote until the beginning of August? I know that you probably need some staff to get going, realizing that we're trying to reopen this park early next year. So Robert, Patrick.
Mayor, I'll defer to our interim Parks Director, Robert. I don't foresee any issues if we address this in August.
Yeah, Mayor Daniels, members of council, and town manager. I think our only timing delay for us is one of the recruitments for the complex supervisor. The second would just be the booking of tournaments. We have several groups that are requesting to book out basically every weekend of the year. So we can tell them there's still time on the horizon and give them an expected date. We would just update the user groups that are.
And we might miss some, is what you're saying. There's some concern.
It's possible they'd be interested in the facility one way or another.
Okay, maybe
no matter the operation.
maybe there's a good compromise that would allow us to do both. Councilmember Cook?
Yeah, Mayor, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, because when we had access to the park, the first thing I talked to the leadership team was we needed to maintain those contacts of all of these tournaments that are basically going to find a different home throughout these next 12 months. And we really need to have the staffing to go back and, I hate to say it, sell, the facility, sell the vision, sell the product that we have. And it's going to take some bodies to do that.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Cook. Robert, I want to call you Councilmember Robert, but that would be wrong because we just gave you a new title, which is our interim Parks and Rec Director, so we won't make you be a council member yet. But how many do you need in order for us to move the ball forward and still, obviously, probably come early August, have a robust discussion with council about the staffing model? 8, 10, 12, like what do you need?
Mayor Daniels, member of council, it would really just be the recreation, the sports complex supervisor, because so much of it hinges on that. I think our current staff can work on starting to book the facility and do those contracts. And then a lot of the other staff related are maintenance design items and how many parks maintenance staff we have and recreation. So our recreation programming can be delayed a few months. It's more of just the facility booking to make sure we hold the tournaments.
Okay, and when do we, were you proposing to start maintenance workers earlier rather than later in order for them to coincide with some of the construction?
We were actually spreading it out throughout the year, so bringing on the recreation complex supervisor first, maybe a month or two before opening senior parks maintenance, and then the rest of the positions would really be only about a month and a half before opening. So we spread it out throughout the year, and even some of the positions delaying until further in the year.
Okay.
Just so that we have a proper.
Let's do this then. Let's authorize 2 positions tonight, if that's acceptable to the council, and then we'll come back and have a better visioning discussion. It'd be great to hear some of your thoughts as we move forward with some of the programming.
We look forward to it. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Councilmember Taylor, you had your hand up, I'm sorry.
Mayor, I just wanted to know if staff wanted to hear our thoughts now to bring to that, or we should defer those later.
Let's defer those. I think we need to have a robust discussion based on some of the options that were presented to us previously, and it looks like there needs to be a lot more analysis done too as far as,
That's
okay,
fine.
let's do that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Ray, you're on the phone tonight. Do you want to add anything to this conversation?
I don't. I think there's been some good comments made, and the additional analysis will make sense. But I do look forward to getting the ball rolling, a little bit of pun intended, and with the tournaments being scheduled, et cetera. And I look forward to this park being open again.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries. Oh, Councilmember Ray?
I said yes.
That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Robert. That moves us to agenda item 28. Actually, I'm going to ask one quick question, one quick pause on that one, because I do think we have some public hearing items we would like to move forward, and I think some of them will be quick. So if you don't mind, to our public safety teams that are here in uniform especially, we'll just push pause on that one for just a second and come back to it. Are there any requests from the council or the public to speak on any of the public hearing items?
Mayor, 29, please.
29, okay, and
I don't have any others, Mayor.
41? And that includes 42A. Everyone was okay with that addition? Okay. At this point, I will open the public hearing on agenda items 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. I will continue to August 2nd, 2018, 38 and 39. Open the public hearing on 40, 42, and 42A, and close the public hearing on those agenda items and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve those agenda items.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 7-0 vote. Thank you. Agenda item 29. I will open the public hearing on agenda item 29. Councilmember Taylor?
Mayor, thank you. You probably know why I pulled this one. Former Councilmember Cooper and Mayor Lewis and I felt it was important to support these wonderful businesses, but in terms of the sampling, that might have infringed on the family-friendly atmosphere that we want in some of these places. So we certainly support Trader Joe's and what they're doing here, but wanted to be able to vote separately. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing on agenda item 29 and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve item 29.
Second.
Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 6-1 vote. Thank you. That moves us to agenda item 41. Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, thank you for the moment here. I reviewed this. I just want to thank everyone working on this. I really like a number of things that are happening here. One, an opportunity for waivers to be granted without having to come to the council. I think that's good. I think that's good because that, you know, if there's a good case for one that meets all the criteria, that's going to probably save the developer the individual time. And so that's good. I also like that there's some objective, measurable standards in here, and that's helpful. So there's some good things happening here. The one piece of this that I don't support as it's written, and I spoke with Kyle earlier, and he seemed at least open or to some ideas here, is that we have some standards related to how far away, let me see if I get this pulled up, I apologize, if I'm even on the right item. Yeah, there it is. So how far away you have to look for overhead lines that are in place on properties that are already developed. And so basically the standard in residential is you have to have, the way it's written right now, is more than 50% of the developed frontage within 1/2 mile on each side of the project. So what that ends up being is a full mile of basically non-undergrounded lines that will never be undergrounded. It has to be that standard. I think a whole mile is extreme. I don't think visually there's any connectability between something that's a mile away and what you're standing, where you're standing. I just think that's a little too much. So the non-residential is a little smaller at a 1/4 mile, which turns it into basically 1/2 mile. What I'm suggesting, Mayor, this isn't a big, I don't think this is a big amendment, but I'm suggesting we cut both of those in half. So you end up with a 1/2 mile when you add the 1/4 miles together on the residential, and then you end up with a 1/4 mile on the non-residential when you add the 1/8 miles together. So that's what I'm going to suggest, or I didn't say that right, sorry. So 1/2 mile on the residential and 1/4 mile on the non-residential, which will give you a 1/2 mile on the non-residential really in total, and you'll get, sorry, you'll get a, yeah, anyway, I'm ready with an amendment. My math is getting a little crazy here, but anyway, so I'd like to amend those from a 1/2 mile for the residential and to be a 1/4 mile there, and then from a 1/4 mile to an 1/8 mile on the non-residential. So that's what I'd like to do, Mayor.
Can I just clarify one question for you, Councilmember Peterson, and that is your goal to make it easier for the waiver to be obtained?
My goal is to make the idea of minimal benefit to accrue more realistic. In other words, make more sense. I think minimal benefit to accrue being a full mile is kind of ridiculous. There's no connectivity between. So even a 1/2 mile, you're going to have a hard time visually connecting those two endpoints. So I still think that's pretty generous. And I'm trying to get to that concept of minimal benefit will accrue to the town. And so I think it's just stretching it a little further than it needs to in order to kind of get to that level, if that makes sense. And this is this is a matter of opinion, but I just think visually that's such a distance. I think it's kind of overblown.
Councilmember Cook?
I'm actually curious to do the test because I was thinking about this, and I think we may have done 3 or 4 of these. And I was looking at them in my mind, and they were much smaller in distance than the languages here. So again, I would love to run the test to see if the ones that we did approve or not approve would have met the test, because I think none of them would have met the test, to me. That's just my opinion. Kyle, I don't know if you're here, but can you, again, just review maybe the 3 or 4 that we did this and see how they correspond? Well, we'll call it the test.
Sure, absolutely. Mayor, Council, the recent ones we've had was the American Orchards, I believe on Guadalupe. It would not have passed this test. The other one was on Tierra Office Park. That also would not have passed the test. And again, our intent behind this is to establish a distance that is least known as we bring the requirements forward during the plan review process.
Mayor, I think that's the benefit to this. The exact distance, I think, is really what we're talking about here. I think it's good to have an objective standard we can all agree on. I just think. So we had 2 out of, how many total have we done, Kyle? 3 or 4? I can't remember.
I have 2 in my head. I know we've worked on one with the school that actually has postponed it, and we'll underground the lines with their right turn lane. Those are the only 3 I can remember within about the last 5 years or so.
So most of them would have failed the test the way it's written now. And I think that's just really maybe a little too far, especially based on this council's judgment of minimal benefit accruing. So
my judgment, actually, I voted no on all of those cases. So I was outvoted. I remember that well. You remember the times you're outvoted, actually, a lot. So I actually think that there is substantial benefit to the community as a whole, especially in the long run when it comes to underground and utility lines. And so I'm of the mind that it should be harder, not easier, to make that happen. Part of it is visual, obviously, but there is a huge safety component as well, especially as the community ages. You only have to go into a community that's 100, 150 years old to see what a failing utility line looks like. It's not pleasant, and it actually could cause major safety issues. Councilmember Anderson?
Kyle, this is presented to user groups. What was their reaction to these numbers?
There were no comments on our distance requirements at all. Nothing came back on those. And that was from the stakeholders groups in December, and then we also sent it out in May for review twice before we brought it to council.
Okay.
And a lot of those, the user groups were the local utilities and also different home builders.
I'm in favor with us moving forward with it as written. I don't know where the rest of the council stands, but I would like us to move forward if possible. Is there a motion? Yeah, Councilmember Taylor?
Mayor, I agree. I'm glad we have an objective standard. I mean, that's a good step forward. I think that does make sense. I'm okay with Councilmember Peterson's recommendation if we bring it down. For me, the most important thing was the ability to appeal. I know we're trying to reduce those, and I think that's a good step forward by having that standard and it's out there and it's communicated. But we all know every project's different, and sometimes it doesn't make sense for an appeal, other times it does. So for me, as long as that's in there, either way, I think that's a good step forward. But, I think it does make sense to lower it a little bit, but those are my thoughts. Thank you for the time, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson.
Mayor, I think it's important to understand that the way this works is these standards I just talked about, waivers shall only be considered under the following circumstances. So it's not even going to get a chance to be looked at. So this is a lot harder. It's already going to be a lot harder. But I think when this council, if it isn't all of them, might be all of them would fail this test that we've approved. We've approved them all. So to me, we wouldn't even have considered them. We could still vote against those waivers. We could deny them. But I don't think we want to set the bar so far out there with something like that in the past we've approved wouldn't even come for us for consideration. So I just think it's a little extreme the way it's written. So that was all. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll move to approve the item amending section, let's see if I get the full section reference here. I apologize. I usually have a full motion prepared, right? But anyway, under waivers shall only be considered section 1, the 1/2 mile would be revised to 1/4 mile. And then in section 2, in the non-residential areas, the 1/4 mile is amended to 1/8 mile.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
No.
That motion passes with a 4-3 vote. Thank you. And I forgot to close the public hearing on that agenda item, but consider that closed. Thank you. All right, that does complete our public hearing items this evening. Thank you for everyone's input and involvement. And that does move us to agenda item 28, which is a big item for us as a council. And I look to our chiefs to assist us.
Good evening. Get a little closer there. Now I got to move my notes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. On behalf of Fire Chief Jim Jobush, as well as the Gilbert Police Department and Fire Department, thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight on the proposed Joint Public Safety Training Facility. As we contemplate meeting public safety needs, this slide is a quick reminder of Gilbert's incredible growth over the past almost 50 years. As you can see by this graph, we are poised to become the 4th largest municipality in the region and 85th largest in the country. And it's really something to say when you consider that there are 19,000 municipalities in the United States. Gilbert, being 72.6 square miles, is larger in area than Washington, D.C., Boston, Miami, and Minneapolis. This is quite something considering that just 5 years ago, Gilbert's census population was 208,000. Since that time, we have added 40,000 people. Gilbert is best in class. As you can see, some of the accolades that are on this slide. With all this population growth, the town has kept pace and made significant achievements, including attaining status as the 2nd safest city and the 12th best place to live in the country. As you see the property tax levy before you, under your leadership, we've accomplished all of these successes within a very conservative financial framework. Over the past decade, Gilbert's secondary property tax has decreased from $1.15 in 2010 to 99 cents for fiscal year 2019. So why are we here today? We are here because we have a vision to be best in class in all lines of service, including public safety. Gilbert residents highly value our status as the 2nd safest city. This map here shows the locations that we currently rely on for our training. Unfortunately, we have been facing several critical gaps to achieving that best-in-class vision. First and foremost, we are approaching 3rd largest municipality in the region, but we are also trying to borrow space and time for our neighboring facilities, as you see on the map, which are considerable distances away, and we're not built to accommodate our training needs. In fact, many of them are expanding their facilities to meet the growth of their own needs. We are experiencing increased vulnerabilities and risks to meeting our own training needs. As you look at these graphs before you regarding our growth of public safety, we don't have a consistent, dedicated facility in which to train our police officers and firefighters. Another critical gap is our public safety retirement forecast. As you can see from the slide on the left, 42% of Gilbert's public safety personnel will be eligible to retire in less than 2 years. And when you look out 7 years, in 2025, 85% of our current employees will be eligible to retire. As we hire new individuals to replace these experienced public safety officers, we are not replacing like for like. We are replacing individuals with decades of experience and certifications with newer, less experienced officers and firefighters. This makes our training needs even more critical. In the next 5 years, the Gilbert Police Department has to hire and train a minimum of 180 officers. That will accommodate both our growth and the attrition rate that we are currently experiencing and projecting. The Gilbert Fire Department has to hire and train a minimum of 60 officers in that same time period. The average years of public safety upon retirement currently is 25.75 years of experience when they retire. We call this the retirement cliff. We are here today because we need a solution that will support our ability to provide the training and resources to our public safety officers before we hit this cliff. As Chief Joe Bush has shared with you in previous briefings, we have already had several live fire rescues just this year. Lack of training is a common contributing factor in public safety personnel deaths and injuries. Having adequate resources to ensure the proper training of our public safety personnel is vital. Sorry. Too many clicks. All right, we'll go with that. To close these critical gaps, we looked at all available options. We explored whether or not we could continue to borrow from other facilities. Based on the decreasing availability and the fact that none of our neighboring cities are in a position to guarantee us consistent time and space, this option was ruled out. We asked whether neighboring cities would partner with us and share the capital costs to build a training facility. The answer again was no. The smartest, most efficient recommendation was to build a facility here in Gilbert and then collaborate with other cities who would have a need to use our facility. This is the recommendation that you see before you that we presented to you back on March 2nd at the Council Financial Retreat. This solution enables us to meet our current training needs as well as accommodates our future training needs without overbuilding the facility. If you were looking to purchase a high-quality vehicle that was reasonably priced, consistently reliable, and delivered a high value for the dollar without being over the top or luxurious, you would eliminate high-end luxury brand. You also wouldn't go to Craigslist and purchase a car for $1,500 that wouldn't last more than a year. The solution before you would be the equivalent of purchasing a reliable, affordable family sedan that does everything your family needs it to do. This solution comes without excessive bells or whistles or things that we don't need. It's not over the top in price, it delivers a great value, and lasts a very long time. So back to why we are here today. As your police and fire chiefs, we have identified a significant and compelling need to close these training gaps for our public safety personnel.
Okay, I'll take us through what the next steps would be. The staff's recommendation and ask of the council is to place this issue on the fall 2018 ballot for consideration by the voters. If that is successful, we will complete design in December of 2018 and anticipating starting construction of spring of 2019 and the facility coming online in the spring of 2021. For a look at what this means to the average Gilbert taxpayer and household, for a family with a $250,000 house, it would equate to $3 per household annually. And you'll see under the current rate of 0.9884, that's $247, and with the rate proposed by staff of an even dollar, that's $250, which equates to the $3 per household. So if we look at our current secondary property tax rate and with the GO debt that is existing and putting this debt on top of that, what that looks like, you'll see an even rate of $1 for fiscal years 19 and 20. Then beginning in fiscal year 21 and on, it starts to drop off. If we look at anticipated bond issuances in the future, fiscal years 20 and 22 for anticipated street bond needs and park bond needs, you will see that the rate then holds at $1 for 4 years through fiscal year 22, and then beginning in fiscal year 23 on, it starts to significantly drop off throughout the rest of that decade and into the next. Another thing staff has been monitoring is construction escalation within the Phoenix market. It's averaged 4.31% through the first quarter of 2018, and that continues to climb from what we've heard today. So any delays in the facility also add significant cost and unnecessary cost because of the construction inflation that would occur. So staff's recommendation, to sum this up, is to place, the request of council is to place the item on the November 6, 2018 bond election, requesting voter authorization for $65.3 million in bonds for the public safety training facility. The remainder of the training facility project costs will be funded through other sources, such as including sale of the original land parcel off of Germain Road in between Gilbert and Lindsay Roads, as well as cash funds from the general fund. And the repayment of the bonds will occur with a total secondary property tax rate of $1 per 100 assessed value. And again, that impact is $3 per household based on a $250,000 house value. So with that, any of us are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that presentation, for the overview. Very helpful and pretty remarkable that we can accomplish so many things within our current structure. So I'm pleased to see that. Council members, it's time for deliberation. Do you guys need town team to keep standing? We have some questions. Okay, Councilmember Peterson.
I've asked for this a number of times. I'm not sure I've gotten it yet. Hopefully we have it. What's the value of the land that the property is on? This will probably be my third time to ask this.
It's 14 mil in the CIP, 14 point something. What its current value is, I don't know.
CIP?
I can talk to that.
So if we add that to the $85 million, the total value, if you will, of the project's about 100, is it 99 million? About 100 million, okay. We had the chart up there with the, can you show the facilities again in the valley? Of those cities who have their own facilities, are there any that are as safe or safer than Gilbert?
Being the second safest in the country, no.
Okay, I'm just confirming. Are there any of those cities who have facilities that have fewer lack of training liabilities?
Mayor.
Or failure to train liabilities?
Mayor and Councilwoman Peterson, I would lump them in similar with us. We all are doing similar work between PD and fire. Each city city or town will be slightly different on how they're organized and structured, but the liability for training would be similar. We both have state and national standards that we would follow both for PD and fire. So comparing our liability to theirs, I'll leave that up to the attorneys, but I would say
maybe
we have
I'm
the
not
same
asking
risk.
this correctly. I should say incidence rate related to lack of training. Last time I asked this, I was told that actually we probably were more on the lower end versus our neighbors. Is that correct, or did I mishear?
We would have to, I don't have the risk management numbers to compare injuries and fatalities. I can speak specifically on fatalities. Obviously, we've had 2 fatalities within PD and none for fire, and we would like to keep that streak at that level, obviously. But injuries, as far as comparing us to other cities, I don't have that with me today, and I don't know if any of the others have that comparison from city to city from risk management perspective of injuries.
Last time I asked that anecdotally, I think I was told that we were on the lower end. I would love the actual data. I'm not trying to take the anecdote further than it probably deserves, but let's see if I had any other questions. Oh, We talk about the rate up there. How can we guarantee that rate? We don't know what values are going to be, right? So these are based on assumptions. I mean, the assessor's going to set values. We get to set the levy. We don't get to set the rate, at least until after he's already done his values, or indirectly, really, but.
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson, yes, that is correct. Using the best information staff has available to us based on historic growth in the community and projected future growth in the community and where valuations are at, that is where we believe things will fall out.
Furthermore, we've got this showing, show that with all the other, layers. Thank you. I mean, we can't guarantee that this is going to happen. There's going to be other projects. There's CIP things. We haven't finished our long-range infrastructure plan, so there's going to be a lot of things filling in there. So it's a little bit misleading to show that we're going to end up with no property tax at some point. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Mayor, Councilmember Peterson, even in fiscal year 42-43, we still do show a secondary property tax, but to your point, yes, this is everything that, to the best of our knowledge, is known from a need standpoint. With each one of these issuance, as they come up for consideration for placement on the ballot, we'll need to evaluate all the projects, the actual need, what we're experiencing in the community, and make decisions based on that judgment at that time, but this is what staff sees at this point.
Well, and I appreciate that, but just as an example, we recently used some voter-approved debt for streets that was 10 years old, and it ended up going to completely different projects that didn't even exist the 10 years previous. So I just want to point out that the picture changes quite a bit, even in 10 years, so much less however many we've got there. Thank you for those responses.
You're welcome. And Mayor, Councilman Peterson, I do have the cost of the land. It's $6.1 million is the value of the land at the proposed site. The land that the staff has recommended that we sell the original site on the 202, which we'd like to see get back into the hands of the private sector and create jobs and tax revenues. The town purchased that land for $14 million a while back. So it's cheaper land that we already owned. The value is $6.1 million.
Thank you. So that brings our total to like $91.1 million total project value.
That is
Does that sound right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for town staff? Okay, we're going to stick to questions, then we'll have the comments from public. Thank you.
Patrick, real quick, can you remind me the square foot for the facilities and then the total acreage?
If you'll give me 30 seconds, I most certainly can.
Okay.
Total acreage of the site is 50. I do know that, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, total acreage of the site, 50 acres, 160,000 square feet for all the buildings included.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. That's not to say that you won't get to sit calmly for the rest of the meeting, but you never do, yes. At this time, we'll look to Vice Mayor to assist us with the request to speak.
Mayor, thank you. I have 18 slips from people that do not wish to speak, but wanted to note on the record that they are for this item. And then I have 3 slips from people that would like to speak. And I will call you down one at a time. Please come to the podium. Just give us your name and town or city of residence, please. Benjamin Lovin.
Good evening, Mayor Daniels, Council. Benjamin Lovin, Gilbert, Arizona. Just briefly wanted to mention, my wife and I moved to Gilbert from a neighboring community just over a year ago. And the main reason we came is just my wife mentioned what a safe place she believed Gilbert to be. When we heard about the proposed initiative to create this facility, she was both thrilled and myself to know that the public safety officials would have the training they need here, close to them. We believe, Gilbert is the best place to live. We want to continue to live here, and seeing our public officials have the resources they need to be safe and effective would inspire us, I guess, to continue to stay in Gilbert.
Thank you, Benjamin. Next, we'll have Brian Ray. If you come down to the podium and again, give us your town or city of residence, please.
Councilman and Mayor, I'm a member, I'm Brian Ray. I'm a Gilbert resident, and I have been for pretty much all my life. And I came here to throw in my support of this, this public safety construction. I know that Gilbert is one of the safest places in the country, and I want it to stay that way. I know we have grown fast. I've seen its growth throughout the course of my lifetime. I know that we are not only the fastest growing, but are one of the largest towns in the country. And with that growth comes room for, room for threats. And I know that with this public safety training facility, that we'll be able to contain those threats and keep Gilbert safe. So, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Michael, if you could come down. I'm not even going to attempt your last name. If you could give us your full name and town or city of residence.
Thank you. I'm Michael Vallecios. It happens a lot, no worries. I'm from Gilbert. I've lived here almost my whole entire life. And I've been blessed to be in such a safe city and appreciate it. And I want to thank all the firefighters and policemen for their service that they do for our community. Same as my friend Brian. This facility will help better train these police and firemen to better protect us. And like he said, faster growing. I think we're the 4th fastest growing municipality in the U.S. And like they said, the 2nd safest. And with growth comes bigger problems. And the facility will help definitely tackle those issues much more effectively. And able to keep that 2nd safest city in the U.S. A possibility. I think this is very necessary, and let's help the people that help us all the time. So that's it.
Thank you, Michael. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. We appreciate that. This time we'll turn it back to council. And I think for the sake of efficiency, Councilmember Ray, if you're available to go first, that way you won't feel like we're ignoring you on the phone.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of comments here, and I've said much of this at the council retreat. We are the 2nd safest. I believe all of us want to become the 1st safest. And a couple other things that I think about. I do want to do all that we can as a town to limit potential liability. I completely understand that by building a training center, that does not limit all liability. But it does help with that process. I realize that this is a tremendous amount of money, and I don't want to sugarcoat that at all. It's a lot of money, and I don't think that it's appropriate for the council to approve this type of money. And so when I talk to neighbors and friends and family about this issue, the overwhelming response that I have gotten is, let the voters decide. They are the ones who will be paying the property taxes on this, and it's exciting to see the potential of doing this without raising the rate. As Councilmember Peterson said, the levy will go up and down based on values, and we have to forecast. There's no other way to do it. And as we look in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, our forecasting may have been low, may have been high. We'll see as the economy plays itself out. But for this project, I think it's best that we let the voters decide what they think is best to do here. And that will be the telling answer, obviously, to the council and the community as a whole. If we put it to a bond and let the voters decide, then they have the final say, which I think is the most appropriate thing here.
Thank you, Councilmember Ray. Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The one thing I want to share, and I know we talked about this in the past, last summer when the team approached, us about the possibility of, doing this, I went on my own to literally negotiate a deal with 3 of the communities that our team uses. That was Mesa, Chandler, and Glendale. And I literally went back and said, you know, the town of Gilbert has $6 million that we would like to invest into your campus so that it would guarantee time for our teams to use your campus, you know, on a pretty much a perpetual agreement. And I'll start with Chandler first. Chandler said, we're not even going to entertain that, Councilmember Cook, because we're at capacity. And in fact, at their facility, it's really heavily focused on fire, and their PD team didn't get much out of that. So, so it's not even a well-balanced campus. Then my next attempt was to go to Glendale, and I met with their leadership as well as one of their council members in my visit there. And fantastic facility. I'm going to say it's probably the Taj Mahal of all training facilities here in the Valley. But in their case, they have already set up partners with other municipalities. And there was no more opportunity to even sign up to it. And whatever they have in reserve as it relates to capacity was pretty much picking up other smaller opportunities to fill in some of their, you know, unused time. But again, they did not want the $6 million from Gilbert. But I think the most logical thought or step was looking here in the East Valley was our Mesa team, because to me that was probably the more logical. It looked more regional. Their campus, in my mind, had a lot more capacity to grow. In fact, they showed me a layout or a plot map of their facility. They showed me the future of different areas that they could build and add capacity to their campus. And I actually thought I was going to get a sale out of this, a deal with them. But through some more negotiation, it came back as it relates to their needs, as it relates to their, you know, what they look at, their whole community as it gets to build out. And they're sharing with me that, you know, Eddie, you know, we appreciate the regional partnership and what your needs are, but as Gilbert grows, you're going to overrun the amount of capacity that we give you, because we have greater needs, you know, especially over in the east side of the airport. There's lots and lots of acres of commercial and residential that they haven't even forecast what their needs are. So that's really unfortunate for me, because I really thought we could have a great partnership, which we do today. But as it relates to giving them a check for $6 million and building a facility, that wasn't going to happen. So at that point, it became very clear to me that from a business case, that we're going to have to do this ourselves. Because as we grow and our needs are coming about, our teams need to have the capacity to train. And again, if we look at you know, the needs here in the Valley, and again, I'm only looking at you know, the bigger players here like Phoenix and Mesa. You know, Phoenix has a need for hiring over 800 police officers. I mean, they're short. And that's not even, that's today. That's not even looking at their attrition of retirement and so forth. And then Mesa has a need of about 300 as well. And, you know, those two municipalities, you know, I can't even imagine how many years, if they were running at full capacity to backfill even their needs, when we would even have any opportunity for our teams to even fill any of those slots. So from a business case for me, it became very clear that, you know, we have to do this. And again, as Councilmember Ray said, it's such a big decision that I don't think this council can actually make on behalf of the community. It really needs to be what I would call a team effort. It really needs to be a community effort, a community decision on voting on this particular bond. And again, I'm extremely in favor of letting the voters decide. I think the voters will look at all the data. You know, we have a number of months to go through this, and they can meet with any of our chiefs to talk about this as well. But again, it is a very important decision. It is an important decision as it relates to, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, to have this facility in place so that the future of our residents and our businesses will know that we'll have the best-in-class team here to protect them. Mayor, I do want to read a letter from our former Mayor Lewis that he sent to me today, since he's on his new assignment. He left today. So this is from former Mayor Lewis that I want to share with all of you. The first role of our local government is to protect our citizens. I'm proud to add my name in support of Gilbert having a modern and innovative public safety facility. Our town leaders have done a great job of being fiscally responsible and managing taxpayer dollars. This will help us to have the ability to pay for this facility and to fund our next generation of public safety heroes so they can be prepared for the various situations that arise in our community. With a growing community and a strong fiscal outlook, now is the time for us to plan for Gilbert's future. I encourage the council to vote yes to the election for the public safety training facility and encourage all citizens to vote yes in November. Signed, Mayor Lewis, or former Mayor Lewis.
Vice Mayor?
That would be Citizen Lewis now, correct? Mayor, thank you. When we talked about this issue last fall at our financial retreat, and then again this spring at our last fall at our retreat and this spring at our financial retreat, many of the things that have already been said by Councilmember Cook and Ray were brought up. I appreciated Councilmember Cook doing the legwork. I know that's something that you appreciate doing, and I appreciated that. And recently I've had the opportunity to go to a teen graduation up at the Mesa facility, Gilbert Fire graduation up at the Mesa facility, and just last Thursday, a Gilbert Police graduation up at Central Christian Church in Mesa. We have a strong hand in running those academies that happen at the time, but they have to happen in other people's facilities. While I'm sitting there with our staff, I learned that even at Mesa's facility, their burn building isn't working. So in order to run the academy in Mesa, they then have to split their fire time in the burn building between Scottsdale and Tempe. So not only are they only using Mesa's facility, they're also having to go to Scottsdale and Tempe and to be able to schedule that time in there already. We all know that that's an issue now. I don't know how it will progress into the future. I think we've been very lucky up until this point. I think I said that at one of our retreats, that we've been very lucky, and I think this is something that we should have been working on already coming up. I know that when I met with Commander Bryce, who at that point I think was already our interim chief before Chief Solberg came on, one of the first things I asked about was a range, because I've been into the range here at the Gilbert PD, and I know how limited the capacity is there, and it's a very important thing for my husband and I, and the Second Amendment and our right to carry, and so it's always on the top of my mind, and that was one of the reasons that the range was added to the design, because we had a long discussion about it. I think it's a very important aspect of what we do on a daily basis. Hopefully our officers don't need to draw their weapons, but when and if they do, I want them to be trained perfectly well on how to do that, whether there are 8 new that just came on last week or whether there's somebody that's been on the force for 20 years. It's very important for us to continue into the future. Mayor, you yourself say all the time that we're not setting ourselves up for the 4 years that we sit on this dais. We're not setting ourselves up for maybe the next 4 years that I get to sit on this dais. We're setting the town up for the next 10 or 20 years in the future of this community. And like Councilmember Ray said and Councilmember Cook echoed, is it's not in my position to agree to spend this much money, but it is in my position to put it to the voters and ask them for their approval to bond this much money and to use it for a facility like this to keep Gilbert the community, the great community that it is, and to move that into the future.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm going to go all the way down the dais to Councilmember Taylor, mixing up the order so that everybody gets a chance to speak.
Mayor, thank you. I think all of us are committed to public safety, and I appreciate we don't have the hyperbole here about if you're against this, then you hate police officers and you hate firemen, because that may come out in a contentious bond election, but it's the furthest from the truth. And not just us, but most of our residents, I know, share those feelings as well. They want to be safe, and they want us to support public safety, and I know we have that commitment to it. I also want to make sure that that this item isn't treated in a binary manner. It's not either this or nothing, right? It's not a 0 or a 1 here. The 99 or 91, however we value this project, or nothing. There's other options that I think are important for us to consider, and I want to unpack some of those. I also think it's important that we make sure that we challenge some of the underlying assumptions to make sure that they're solid. And that's how I've analyzed this. You've heard some of it. Maybe there's some new analysis here that I think we should consider. At the end of the day, I'm as committed as everyone that we have a need. We need a facility. I differ in how we should finance that, and I'm going to show why I do that and then explain how we can address this. The other thing I want to say before I start addressing the assumptions here is you've heard me talk about in a community there's two teams. There's an offensive team and there's a defensive team. And I've said many times, I'm going to continue to say, we're the second safest city, or the safest city, because of our offensive team, primarily. Our defensive team is police, fire, courts. They do a great job. There's a deterrent effect. But the offensive team in a community has to be there. And when that falls apart, you have crime skyrocket. What's the offensive team? First is families. Second is the faith groups and our schools, strong teachers that instill character and values in the hearts and minds of our young people. Our service organizations like the Lions and the Boy Scouts and the Girl. That's your offensive team. And when you have strong social capital, right? Bowling alone, the old Putnam Harvard article, right? When you have that in a community, you have a safe community because we value each other's lives and we treat each other with kindness. And then when we make mistakes and there's flaws there, which there always is, when you have a strong defense, like we do with police and fire, then you really win championships. You have to have both of them, and that's what I believe the secret is. So I'm not downplaying it, but I want to make sure that that's really clear, because I think that's something that's understated in our dialogue about our second safest city. Now, Mayor, to some of the underlying reasons why I think the level of funding here is too high, I'd like to share a couple of those things. Now, you've heard me talk about the square footage here, and we all saw some data, but I think it's worth sharing with the public about some benchmarks. We're building a school here, right? This is a training facility. This is a school. It has a couple of things that are very similar, a couple of things that are very different, right? So, but I think the educational institutions are one of the best benchmarks, because that's what this is, right? It's a training facility. So here's some facts. Charter schools are built between about $180 to $205 per square foot, okay? They don't have all the amenities that district schools are, so their benchmark is a little bit higher. They're roughly between $220 and $280 per square foot. Some a little more, some a little less. That's generally, if you ask now these are all in costs, okay? These are improvements, this is land, this is not just the bricks and sticks, okay? When we built St. Xavier, I asked to get some benchmarking square footage numbers of the most recent, 3 or 4 recent university level buildings, because they're even more expensive. They have more amenities, more tech, more labs. They're running roughly, the data I got, this is a couple years old, so we can inflate this a little bit, roughly $290 to about $320 to $330 at the time is what the most recent university level buildings were. St. Xavier came in a little bit higher than that, depending on how you count it. You're looking at $340 to $380, maybe $400, depending on if you throw in the cost of the debt issuance. So when we have the public facility here running at $429, that's something that concerns me, because our cost per square foot is unusually high compared to, I'm not comparing it to charter schools or district schools, even though district schools have very expensive pieces to their campuses, right? Like an auditorium, that's very much more expensive. That'll push that average up. But we're pushing over $130 per square foot, and then it's actually higher when you put some of the other costs in it as well. So I think in terms of one of the major assumptions in terms of costs, we are gold plating this thing, right? This is a Lexus, this is a Cadillac. When we want a Ford and a Chevy, that's going to be good, it's going to be durable, it's going to take us where we want to. And so those are the numbers that I think we need to consider, at least on the cost basis, right? And that's why the numbers are so high. Second is, those are really just the costs that we know today, but the design isn't even finished yet. There's many, many construction projects that, and those that have built buildings like me have always seen when you actually design the thing, your costs actually go up. Very rarely do they come down, right? So, you know, and 10% contingency is very much a reality here to push this over 100 million. I mean, that's a very common contingency factor. So we haven't designed this yet. We're in the process of it. There's, you know, 4 million committed to it. We just had a big changeover. So we really don't know what the total cost is right now. So to send a debt package out for something that, we have some, you know, decent research. I'm not saying that there isn't good work done, but we don't have the designs in. And when those designs come in, if it happens like most construction projects, it's going to go up. That's just the reality of construction, especially now, because steel is up and labor is up. I mean, it is a unbelievably expensive time to build a commercial facility. And next year when this thing goes up, assuming it passes, it's only going to get more expensive. Okay, so that's another, even assuming that those are good numbers, I don't think that assumption is really valid because of the current economic conditions of rising costs of steel, costs of labor, and so forth. Excuse me, Mayor, a few more points here. The retirement issue is obviously a function of the age of retirement. I've been hearing the retirement, I've been in private sector for 20 years, and I basically heard the same narrative over and over and over to justify this project or that project or that project. So, you know, things have a logical conclusion, and the conclusion for a staffing problem is a staffing solution, not necessarily a building solution or a construction solution, okay? So I think if we're addressing the staffing solution, we need to have more, the retirement crisis that we hear. Inevitably, what's happened in these other high-tech, you know, global conglomerates I've worked for is they've continued to work at the normal attrition rates and recruitment rates, notwithstanding the aging workforce that they had. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I think when we're saying we have a problem, we need to have a logical answer to that. And a facility is part of it, but it's not all of that, and we need to have more information on that. Another point, Mayor, is there's only so much money that we have, right? And only so much money that we can bond. We also have the regional park coming down the tracks. And Patrick, I appreciate the chart there. I think Victor pointed out a few things there. I think the other thing, the only thing I would add to his point was that I know the chart tapered off, and I don't disagree. That's what we know today. But what we also know today is that we try to keep that, or we have historically kept that maxed out, right, with other projects and other projects and other projects. We also know that model doesn't consider the economic a downturn. And you've heard me say that. I know I'm a broken record on that point, but I don't think we have enough sensitivity analysis in that. And the reason why that makes sense, or to include in this analysis, is because of why it was kicked down the road in the first place, right? If we're not building in that, what we're doing is we're actually bottling up money that could go to roads or sustaining workforce, and we're committing it to debt service. So it does put some employees at risk because you're committing money that could sustain them or other projects that we have at risk, okay? Councilmember Peterson talked a little bit about the tax implication. I'm not going to restate anything there. The other thing from Councilmember Cook's research, and I appreciate the time that he spent with our neighboring communities. That was important for him to do that, and I appreciate that time. But I think what it also validated is one of the assumptions is that this will be a big collaboration effort, and lots of municipalities will be here. One thing that I heard from multiple public safety officers from multiple jurisdictions is that the culture is to have your own thing and do your own thing, and collaboration sometimes exists. Most of the time it doesn't. But the good thing is we're going to still collaborate on a lot of things, because even with all of the amenities in here at the full build out, we're still going to need other communities and important partnerships. So I hope we can do that. I doubt, and I don't think it's smart to build that into our assumptions, because of culturally what we know is true and what we're hearing. So here's my conclusion here is, do we need one? Yes, absolutely. There's no question about it. And do we need one straight away? Yes, I think we need one straight away. I don't think we need one at this cost. And I think because if this goes to the ballot, it will lose. I believe it will lose. I believe it'll be sticker shock to the community, and it'll go down, and it will only delay things further, which is not what I want to have happen. I believe we need it sooner than later, but to put it to a contentious ballot initiative and have it go down, which I believe it will at this price point, it just sets us back, okay? So what I think we need to do is to look at a more reasonable cost per square foot and look at how much, and I can give you a sample model. I don't want to do the numbers over here, but if you just bring it down to the costs of ASU's recent properties, you're looking at something under 40 million. And then you can offset that with the with costs of other land that we have already committed to this. And you're bringing this down to a same level of funding that we've authorized over the dais. Or if you think that it needs to go debt, I think that it's important for us to pay for this in cash, and we absolutely can, because we do have a strong economy, and we can pay for a lot of this in cash, and there's maybe a small amount of debt that we need to. But I think that's the most viable way that will actually have public support and get us the facility in a timely manner. So, Mayor, I really appreciate you giving me a generous amount of time to explain some of those, but that's my thought on that. So I'm not voting in favor of this because I don't think it'll pass, and I don't think it's a good use of our money, but I think there is a better way to do it, and I wanted to share those ideas and thoughts for our consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Councilmember Anderson?
I'll try to keep this brief. First, I'm glad that we've made the progress that we've made. I think when we initially started, we weren't all convinced that we needed to even build this facility. I think we're at a point now where we all at least agree that we need to build a facility to remain as a community of excellence that we are. We need to have the types of facilities that keep our public safety personnel trained and able to respond to the needs of our community. We've gone back to the staff, I don't know how many times since the retreat. It's already been mentioned how we've talked about this ad nauseum at the retreats. We've asked them to go back several times and sharpen their pencils and look at the needs. And those pencils now are probably about this big. They've sharpened them so many times. And I do believe that, and it's already been mentioned several times, that this is a decision that is big enough that needs to be made by the community. And going to the election, initially I had some reservations about the price we are at now. But again, since the staff has gone back and sharpened their pencils and showed us the tax rates that have changed my perception of what is possible, and I tend to disagree that the bond would go down in defeat. I think that once the community realizes the importance of this facility and sees that we can do that within our existing structure, I think is a no-brainer. And I want to thank the staff for all the work that you've done to present the material that we've asked for, and working with us to get to a point where we can turn this over to the public and let them make the final choice. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have long comments prepared, so I will probably be very brief. I think we all agree that public safety is our #1 priority. And we're all on that same page. We all agree that we want our public safety personnel to have the tools they need to succeed, to be safe, and to continue to protect our community. We're all on the same page. The challenge is, and I think we're all on the same page, that there is a need for a facility. Where I depart is that I don't think it's a $91 million need. I don't believe that. One of the examples I would give, and I've heard the argument many times that it's just not efficient to have a classroom in one place and a training a few miles away. Well, a practical training a few miles away. Well, that may not be perfectly efficient, but I think it's a lot more efficient than building duplicate classroom space when we already have it. So that's one example of where a lot of this facility is classroom space, and we have empty classrooms that are underutilized right now in our public facilities. So that's just one example. I think there are a lot of other ways you could look at this. And just from a data perspective, if we're looking at correlations, and I pointed this out, yes, they were loaded questions, but Gilbert is the second safest city in the country, by far the safest city in the Valley. And I appreciate Councilman Taylor pointing this out. We have a great offensive team. I do not want to undervalue our defensive team. They're absolutely critical. But our offensive team is oppressive here in Gilbert, and one of the interesting statistics I've pointed out in other occasions is that Gilbert has traditionally had the lowest number of police officers per citizen ratio in the Valley. And out of curiosity, I graphed the correlation between that ratio and crime rates. And what I found was a positive correlation. In other words, as you had more officers per citizen, you had more crimes in the Valley. Gilbert had the lowest of each. Obviously, what we're seeing here is that Gilbert is a special place. We're not going to, the Gilbert Way is the Gilbert Way for a reason. We have different needs. They don't track along the same lines as other communities. And I think, in fact, with what we're proposing, we're kind of getting off the norm of what Gilbert does. Making more of less has served us very well. If results are your best measure of success, we are killing it in Gilbert. So, all of that being said, I am hoping that, and I heard other comments from other council members that the price tag seemed a little high. And now I hear the comment, we shouldn't make this decision as a council. Let's be very clear. Legally, we can't. If we're going to use a secondary property tax, we have to get authorization from the taxpayers. So we can talk about that, but I will also say that ballot is going to be written in its support. It is going to be written as a need, and it's going to be stated that way. I doubt staff's going to let me write some comments on the ballot, because it's going to be stated as an absolute need, and the citizens are going to take it that way. So at the dollar amount we put on that ballot. So we can put a lower dollar amount on there. And I would suggest that we go with the lowest option that we were presented with from staff. It's about 47 million would be the bond instead of the 65 being proposed. So almost 20 less. And I propose we would do that. Now, I've heard a lot about construction cost escalation. Yeah, they go down too, trust me. I'm in the construction industry. Yes, we're in a hot market now. But things change, and you also pay interest when you bond for more. So there's costs on both sides. And at the end of the day, I'd rather build what we need now and then reevaluate in a few years if we haven't met our needs and do more as needed and pay as you go as needed as we can. And I agree, I appreciate those comments from Councilmember Taylor. So with that, Mayor, I won't be supportive of the dollar figure that's proposed. In fact, I'm going to try and move to amend. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but I do think there's another amount that's more appropriate, and you know, I still feel like it's somewhat of a stretch, frankly, but I think I could, with a straight face, put that to the voters.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. I'll round out the conversation today and just make a few comments. And I'm grateful to all of our council for the diligent work that's been done. I know there's been many, many, many hours spent by council to learn and to understand, probably 10 times that amount, maybe 20 times that amount by staff and team to dive down and to really hone in on what this decision is. I think I was a no for like 2+ years as we began the conversation. And it was a no, we need more data. No, we need more information. No, we need to make sure that we're looking at this from every single angle. And after, I think we've been about 3 years of discussion at this point, I actually believe that we have done that. We have done the data analysis. As you've heard on this dais, everybody recognizes that this is a need. The size and scope is really, I guess, continually up for debate. I just want to make a quick comment about the offensive and defensive teams, and I love the analogy, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that our police and fire are actually very much part of our offensive team as well as our defensive team. And the reason that I make that statement, forgive me for being anecdotal, but I've heard 2 really incredible stories over the last couple of weeks that I feel compelled to share. The first one was an assisted living facility. The director there told me this neat story about this woman who every day goes for a walk. She's perfectly fine. And one day, she got confused as she was trying to make her way back to her assisted living facility. And so police was called, and police came, and fire responded as well, and they were able to safely get this woman back to her home, and she was delivered safely without incident. And then comes the additional offensive piece, where a member of our police department stopped in the facility the following day to check on this sweet woman and make sure that she was doing okay, that she felt more comfortable and confident in our community. And that is not something that's probably part of our training program, but it's the Gilbert way, and I think it illustrates that they're on our offensive team. And then another example where I have a good friend whose daughter is, she was born at 24 weeks, so she's special needs. She's a darling girl, and oftentimes suffers from seizures. And so our fire department showed up in their time of need and served this family in the best way that they could. But they didn't just stop there. They went back. They checked on the family. They developed this deep relationship with this family because they're going to be responding to this home probably for the next 2 or 3 decades as this young child needs constant care. And that is part of the offensive team. And I think it's really important to note that, yes, they are there when we need them, when it's a 911 defensive play, but they're very much part of our offensive team. You don't have Froyo with the 5-0 like they did yesterday and just be defensive. That's very much an offensive play, and that's the community policing and some of the response that we see. So I want to make sure that we touch on that. There is an opportunity to pay as we go on this facility, but I can't help but think of the direct analogy with our streets. When we're building out a major arterial, we're not building it for today's traffic. We're building it to the full standard so that when the community is 330,000 people, we have the infrastructure needed and we aren't behind. And for me, this is really a lot of the same dialogue. We're not building a street in this instance, track, yes, but not a street. And I think it's critically important that we don't look just for what we need over the next 2 or 3 years, but that we really are looking out 10, 20, 30 years. This is a lifetime type decision. This is a generational type decision. And I think it's critical for us. Over time, we've refined the vision and identified, again, the true need. And I think this commitment is very much a reflection of the priorities of the community. And I think that's critical, that as we decide to send this to the voters, that we are keeping in mind the values of this community. Public safety being a pillar of this community, and all of the other aspects that we've discussed. This is another one, too, where I reflect on what is leadership. What does it mean that we sit up here and we vote and make decisions and process data and do a ton of homework and build relationships in the community, but really, ultimately, what is leadership? Leadership is making the really hard decisions that really matter. And I think this is one of those that we will look back on as a council and be grateful that we stood up when we needed to. So not only am I supportive of this agenda item tonight, but I'm also supportive as we move forward to the bond election, and I'd be happy to educate and do all that I can to make sure that the public really understands the critical importance of this decision. So with that, my speech is over. Thanks for indulging me. Councilmember Cook.
Mayor, I move that we approve agenda item 28.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Mayor, I move to amend the motion, revising the amount from 65.35 million to 47 million.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. Please vote solely on the amendment.
No.
That motion fails with a 5-2 vote. And that moves us to the original motion, and we have a second. Please vote.
Yes.
That motion carries with a 5-2 vote. Thank you. We appreciate everyone and your participation, and know there's lots of people here paying attention tonight. We're grateful for that. At this time, we will move to agenda item 43, a presentation on an alternative for Southeast Regional Library water feature. David?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. A number of months ago, we brought before you an item for consideration for the water feature at the Southeast Regional Library. The council asked at that point in time, and staff was directed, and a small task force was formed. It was led by Councilmember Scott Anderson, and thank you to Councilmember Anderson for his time, his dedication, and his service to the community, and working with staff as we tried to find another alternative to bring forward. What specifically we're asking for tonight is some direction from the council as we look to repurpose or change look for some changes at the Southeast Regional Library and coming up in future years and some direction there. To give a little bit of background, that facility opened in 1999, and it is currently the busiest library in the Maricopa County Library System, with nearly 750,000 visitors going through the library this past year. It's an extremely busy facility. The riparian, when you add the the riparian preserve at Water Ranch, there at this facility, you're getting closer to 1 million visitors a year that meet and go and utilize the facilities here that the town of Gilbert has provided in with the Maricopa County Library District as well. One of the things that we do have happening frequently from users of those facilities are complaints about the parking and the availability of parking and the lack of a connection between those two different parking lots. There's a parking lot that you enter off of Greenfield Road and a parking lot that you enter off of Guadalupe Road, and they are not connected for the library. There's also a parking lot for the Riparian Preserve, and it is also not connected to the others. There's a little bit of background I wanted to cover here with you. At the facility, we've been experiencing some challenges. This is a picture of some of the drainage, after some significant storm events, the flooding that happens and sits at that parking lot at the Southeast Regional Library. That's something that was really not being considered as we're looking at the water feature. It's a water feature unto itself, but we'd like to remove this water feature if we could. That picture there shows you some of the drainage facilities. You have roadway drainage coming off of Guadalupe Road and also off of Greenfield Road, and the storage and disposal system's not functioning adequately. So as we went forward and look at some new options for that was something that came into play that was not there previously being considered. A number of years ago, the town staff worked with the Arizona State University, the College of Architecture and Environmental Design, doing some projects to look at some options on how that water feature could have been repurposed. There were a number that were prepared. They were presented to the Parks Board. 4 of those, the Parks Board considered them, and there was one that the Parks Board thought was the most appropriate. And at that point in time, the project didn't go any further. It kind of went back on the shelf for a while. This image that you're seeing here is what is the one that was chosen by the Parks Board that they would have recommended forward had that action occurred. One of the things that Councilmember Anderson had asked for is that we look to that and see if there's things from that could be reutilized or repurposed and brought into something going into the future. A number of options were brought forward and considered. Those were shared with the council as well. And of those, it was felt that the most appropriate one to move forward with is the one that you're seeing a portion of here now. We also took it, Councilmember Anderson's request, to take the portions of that ASU design that was the most favored by the Parks Board and implement it. The things that it had in there from a palette of the plants that were there, some of that linear connectivity. One of the things that's included in this that you can see in the middle, there's a raised pedestrian table that would improve the access from the library out to the sidewalk along the street. That's one thing that's been talked about, is some of the ability to make mobility more appropriate. There are people that are wheelchair bound that utilize this and also get picked up out on the street in the bus pullout that's there. So this is the proposed change that the project that we'd like to bring forward to you. This change does a number of things to the facility. One thing it does that we feel is very important is it's 58 new parking spaces. That's about 25% more parking than is currently available, public-facing standard parking spaces at the Southeast Regional Library. Looking at it from a larger picture, one of the things that it does is it's going to close off 2 of the driveways. My laser doesn't show up. My green one wasn't working. I'm sorry. It shows up good. This blue one is rubbish. Anyway, it closes off the driveways.
Look at that. Everyone wants to help you. They're worried about your laser pointer.
Nerd. The red doesn't. Dang it. I had a green one because I've tried red before and it didn't work, and the green did, but the batteries were dead and I didn't have any in my desk. One thing that we do here is we're going to take excuse me? Can you see it okay? The blue one did show up?
I think we can handle it. Let's just keep going. Thank you.
Stressing our town engineer out.
You wanted to stay till 10, didn't you?
I was just hoping you were going to wear your hard hat, your fancy one for this.
I could run and grab it if you'd like. We're going to be closing off the driveways that are closest to the intersection. Those but we're going to be making sure that we keep the connectivity and circulation inside the parking lot so people can, if you enter on Guadalupe, you could go all the way around and drop off your recyclables and then turn around and go back out onto Guadalupe. You can circulate inside that parking lot. We're not going to restrict the circulation. We're going to keep it open. This will add parking spaces. What it will do also is it'll help us to avoid having to do anything in Guadalupe Road. The median in Guadalupe Road does not extend past that first driveway entrance. These driveways as designed do not meet the town's design standards for safety and proximity to the intersection. By closing them, we'll be meeting the town standards. We'll be making an unsafe condition and unsafe movements that I see. I saw 3 of them today as I drove past that facility twice. It will remove that ability for people to pull out in front of traffic without enough room for that traffic to avoid them. It will also, we're going to be adding right turn lanes on Guadalupe and Greenfield Road to the 2 driveways that do remain open. They do not have those turn pockets. They should have those turn pockets because of the amount of traffic that goes in and out of them. It's an unsafe condition. A new development coming into the town would be required to have those put in place. When you put all of those parts and pieces to it, when you look at a 20-year-old parking lot, and I've got with Streets to verify this, and this number is a little bit different, Councilmember Anderson, because I went back and double-checked with Streets, and we had an error in our spreadsheet. The total cost of the project is just shy of $3 million, but it adds 25% more parking spaces at the Southeast Regional Library. So what is the ask of the Town Council? We recommend this project to move forward as the concept that the task force brought together. We would suggest that that be looked to be added in fiscal year 20 or 21. We did look at trying to find a way if it was possible in 19, and it's not possible. So we would ask if we could add it in 20 or 21 when there would be resources potentially available to be able to implement the recommendation. And with that, if there are any questions.
No problem, Mayor. After 8:30, we're good. What did you discuss potential source of funding for that cost up there? Was it parks, or what are the initial discussions, or is that something that you would need some guidance on?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Taylor, great question. We discussed every potential source of funding, and there were none available for next year. It is going to be a general funded project because of the nature of the work. It's a municipal facility, and there just isn't any potential resources that are available to us to do anything sooner. And we're going to be looking to Kelly and her team to help us find the rabbit in the hat for FY20. Hopefully.
Thank you.
A quick question and then a comment. Does this include having an active feature again with flowing water? Is that what's part of this, or no?
Great question, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Peterson. This does not include an active flowing water feature as part of the parking facilities or out in front of the Southeast Regional Library. It's going to be a landscaped feature.
So there's no pumps and pipes and stuff that could break. That's gone.
There are no pressurized pipes and pumps. There are still drainage pipes that will have to be replaced and other things, but those are passive in nature, not active in nature.
Okay, thank you. And in my mind, that's already a huge improvement. I will say the price tag is a little too rich for my blood, but I'm also going to, so my preference would be that we replace the feature with turf, and then when we can afford it, maybe we look at something like this. But the fact is, I'm not going to be here to approve the CIP in 2020, so that's kind of outside my purview, isn't it? Anyway, you heard my comment, so.
Councilmember Cook.
Thank you, David. Can you go back to the picture that a little closer, the other one? Just to clarify, there is going to be traffic flow on all of the parking lots, especially around the elbow. Is that correct?
Mayor Daniels, Councilmember Cook, yes, the traffic will be able to flow freely back and forth. That raised pedestrian table will be an impediment to cars speeding through there, and they will also be able to turn around before they get to it from either direction.
And, to me, this is really the best plan, only because for the years of being a resident here and using the library, that was always kind of like the issue. How do I go in this parking lot over here on the south side, but I can never connect to the east side. So trust me, you're going to win the hearts of a lot of parents that are really going to like this design, especially the additional parking places. So I'm very much in favor of this. I don't know where Kelly's hiding, but I hope she can find that rabbit in the hat. I'm not sure. Maybe Patrick's salary can go down a little bit or something. I don't know. Maybe I could. Maybe you could donate some of that to help out here.
Powerball.
But anyways, I do like this this design a lot, and I think the public will appreciate this as well. Thank you.
Mayor David, thank you. I'm amazed at the amount of people that use this facility on a daily basis. I think it's a wonderful facility. I've always hated the parking lot. I've always hated the entrances so close to the intersection. We'll be able to fix all of that. I agree that the price tag is very high. Maybe something will change as we're looking for the funds to put into this, but I think it is such a huge improvement, and thank you for doing all the work that you have done.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
I don't know if you all heard it, but David said 1 million visits per year between this, the library and the riparian preserve. That's a lot of people using that parking lot. And I can't tell you how many times people complain to me during events that they couldn't find parking. And I can't tell you how many times the personnel in the library receive complaints about no parking. So I agree that this would be a very good improvement to the site. When we first started on this, when we first started talking about this, the option seemed to be, just as Councilmember Peterson said, to just fix the pipes and fix the water feature and just get it running again. And in my mind, that's the definition of insanity, because it hasn't worked for several years. So I think this is a great option, and I think incorporating the design, that one thing that we need to do is let those students know. I don't know if they're still at ASU or not, but whoever was involved in that, we need to let them know that we've incorporated that design into the project. It was something that I know they all took pride in, that participated in that process, and we need to let them know that we've chosen at least the palette of landscape material to use in that. And I think over time, I agree with everyone else. We'll be able to find the money. I have full confidence in Kelly that she can find that money, or Patrick's salary. I agree with that. We can find the money somehow to do this, because it's a needed thing in the community, and there will be a lot of thanks for it. I can guarantee you that. Thanks, David.
Councilmember Cook, and then back to Councilmember Taylor.
Yeah, just one more thing. I mean, it obviously comes back to CIP prioritization. David, do you have any idea where this may rank as it relates to prioritization? Because I know we have a lot of CIP projects. I'm thinking of, maybe there's one that's 3 years out or 4 years out that we push, back a little further, and maybe this takes a little higher prioritization. I mean, what would be some of the ways that you could accelerate this to be higher prioritization? Because I will tell you, the public, as you talk about those 1 million, users that visit, or visitors that come to here, I think this might raise that a little bit here.
Mayor Daniels, Councilmember Cook, that's a great question and a great comment. That is a process that we have not gone through as staff yet, but would look forward to the opportunity to do that. Anecdotally, I could share that this is one from the staff. They receive complaints regularly. We have Facebook posts. We have things, if you'd like to, that we could share with you, that it is very important to the staff, and that would be something that prioritization process would be, we'd be happy to go through that.
Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, I think I can find where we can find the money if we find Patrick's late fees at the library. It's got to be in that number there somewhere. Mayor, you've heard me certainly support things that are facing our residents and prioritizing those things that really have direct impact to them. So love this. This was actually my first meeting after I was sworn in. Mayor Lewis assigned me to be the liaison to Parks and Rec, and this is the first presentation at the first meeting was the ASU students. And one of the themes there that we were a little bit wrapped around the axle on is they never had, they had a lot of pedestrian activity in that corner. And former council member Presmick kept saying, well, how are you going to keep them safe? You know, that's a busy corner. And some of them had, you know, soccer activity, you know, where you kick a ball in. Anyways, so I reflected back on that. And this doesn't really have any of those safety elements that were problematic in the original Once Upon a Time, because it's parking and people are flowing in. Anyways, Mayor, I think this is something we can, I mean, it is a nice to have, but I think it's a great suggestion. Support it. Hopefully we can find it in 2021, and Patrick's late fee should take the edge off that.
I think we can safely call this an upgrade. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. I don't think you need a motion from us on this agenda item, but I think you've heard the direction that we would like you to pursue this as a option for future CIP. So thank you. Appreciate it. All right. I think that actually completes our agenda items and has us move to agenda item 44, boards, commission, and committee reports. Anybody? Anyone? Oh, Councilmember Peterson.
I guess I could have done it under current events. Just wanted to comment, we're excited for I Run for Good 2018, benefiting Ascend, helping individuals and families in crisis is our cause. And we've got some great sponsors already. Of course, presenting again is Dignity Health, and we just love and appreciate them. What's fun to see, though, is we've also seen a couple of food banks jump in. And initially, Midwest Food Bank was wanting a silver sponsorship, and they were talking about that. And then we had United Food Bank jump in at gold. And just a couple days after that, I heard from Midwest that they wanted to talk about gold. So, you know, it's really neat to see these organizations' enthusiasm to engage with the community and also help others they know are in need. And these are actually partners. They often work together anyway. So some neat opportunities coming out of that. I just want to recognize those sponsors and the good things happening there, and excited. Again, you can sign up to run already. It's cheaper to run as a team. So get a team of 10, and let's see who can be the fastest and the best. And irunforgood.org is the site. So just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Mayor, for the time.
Thank you. Any other comments on board, committee, or commission reports? All right. We do have some future meeting agenda items for next fiscal year. A report from town manager and current events.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate the assault on my salary tonight. And I just would like to say, since we're sharing, for the record, when you cut your salaries a couple months back, I really had a feeling that you didn't go far enough. So I would be more than happy to help you reevaluate that decision. And
so moved.
You know what? I think some of us would be okay with that, Patrick, if you would follow with us, you know.
If you can indulge me again, big meeting agenda tonight, and some of these items are literally things that have been 9 years in the making, and just an amazing amount of work by some great staff that are present here tonight, and some aren't. So I'd like to recognize just a few of those. San Carlos Water Agreement, a critically important agreement for this town and our future and the security of our water supply. We've got a great partner in the San Carlos Apache Nation. We have been through a lot of hoops and hurdles with different federal agencies and securing all the necessary approvals for this, and so we are right on the cusp of it. And I want to recognize Chris Payne, our town attorney, Eric Braun, who's the town's water resource manager, Mary Goodman, who's assistant to the town manager, Leah Reinheimer, deputy town manager, and Renee Kean, who is our intergovernmental affairs director, as well as Mayor Daniels for the great work she did with Secretary Zinke and getting us in front of the right people in D.C. who could listen to our arguments and help us break through the roadblocks that we experience. Thank you. As well, the public safety training facility, we know that this has been an endeavor that's actually been over a decade in the making now, and there's still a lot of work to be done with this, and there's a lot of answers to be, questions, and answers to be given to questions, and obviously controlling those costs are first and foremost in our minds. But I wanted to recognize some of theirs, and there are so many people that have been involved with this. I can't recognize them all, but some of the more prominent faces: Leah Reinheimer, Chief Mike Solberg, Fire Chief Jim Joe Bush, Assistant Fire Chief Rob Dugan, Commander Randy Bryce, Town Engineer Susanna Struble, and countless others on all of their staffs that have been involved with this. Both of our ACs in fire had a heavy amount of involvement. And then Elliott District Park with the repairs, as well as the staffing: Jacob Ellis, one of our Deputy Town Managers, David Fabiano, our Town Engineer, Susanna Struble, who was our Assistant Town Engineer and CIP Manager, Robert Carmona, our Interim Director of Parks and Recreation, and two of his key leaders, John Kennedy and Rocky Brown. And from those last three, San Carlos Public Safety Training as well as Elliott District Park, special recognition to Kelly Fost, who has been pulled more ways than I think is humanly possible in asking her to regularly find us money. She literally locks her door now, and you can see her in there. No matter how hard you beat on it, she won't open it or answer her phone. But she's
on the phone with Councilmember Peterson, more than likely.
She has been invaluable on all three of those efforts. And then our land auctions. If you have a desire to join this great community and develop in this great community, bring your checkbook and check the website. We've got 2 great parcels that are going to be going up for sale, and we couldn't have gotten here today without Mary Goodman, who has just been exhaustive in her work on this and the research and helping us understand what we need to do to bring those parcels to market and realize the full value from them so we can apply those funds to our parks. She has been fantastic. And then she's got a partner in crime and sidekick, Kyle Miras, who's stepped up and helped us as well with a lot of land use issues, as well as carrying the ball when Mary was out for a little while. So thank you to Mary. And then a special recognition to a department. I think I hit every department last week, but one, our digital government department. Just in general, what a great year they've had with our 311 app, which has just been an amazing thing for our community, as well as the open data portal, which has won a couple of awards, and just all the work they do in helping us communicate to our residents and get feedback from our residents. They just do an exceptional job. So thank you to Dana and Jennifer and their whole team. And with that, Mayor, that's all my comments for tonight.
Thank you, Patrick. Any report from council on current events? Councilmember Cook.
Mayor, thank you. This week, I had the privilege and opportunity to speak along with the AMWA team at a legislative special subcommittee related to Arizona water. And the area that I shared and the rest of the team shared was related to effluent credits that are planned to be sunsetted in 2025. And we don't want that to happen. You know, we want the credits to continue. So on behalf of our community, was able to hopefully the legislators that were present at the subcommittee heard from AMWA that this is a very, very important feature that we look at. Because if they sunset that credit, it means all the projects that we do related to taking all the water and reusing it. I mean, at that point, what would be the motivation for us to do this? So anyways, that's coming up in 2025. The legislation's probably going to be looking at it next year, so I would just ask the council to be able to chat with our friends in the legislation to really look at a policy that really allows communities that do use the ability to effluent water as part of the community, that they continue to have those credits.
Thank you, and that's an important update. It was interesting. Somebody was asking me, what does the mayor do? And you kind of laugh about it. You're like, carry big scissors. And but interesting to note that there has not been a day that has gone by that as I've been the mayor, that I have not talked about water in some form or another, whether it's water treatment, acquisition of water rights, whether it's, regional policy or statewide policy on water. It's such an important part of what we do. So thank you for representing us so well on that board. Councilmember Taylor.
Mayor, thank you. if I can just make a comment on water, really it's just a thank you for your leadership on this. I mean, there's lots of things that we have before us, and I appreciate you putting first things first. I mean, that's a major priority. If I look back on, if we build a David Letterman top 10 list of what we accomplished this year, that's got to be up there at the top. Years in the making, tons of work. You probably, maybe you have it. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I'll be short because I want to hear it, but hopefully that's on there. At least that's my vote. And Patrick, thank you to your team. You listed more. I don't want to restate all that, but ton of great work that is going to benefit. It's usually the small things that are the big things in life, right? And this is definitely one of them. It was on consent, just kind of went through, but it's going to have a major impact for Gilbert. So thank both of you for that. And then just one last plug, since we don't have a couple meetings for a few weeks. We have an election coming up. I am not on the agenda for public purposes, but encourage everyone to focus on this race, encourage everybody to vote, encourage everybody to sign up by early ballot if that's their preference, or show up on the day, and get yourself familiar with the candidates and participate. Gilbert's a great place, and one of the reasons is because we have active people, and the more educated they are, it's just going to make us all the stronger as a community. So just encourage people to start tuning in on the local race as well as all the other ones. Mayor, thank you for the time.
Thank you. I'm excited to just do a quick recap of this last year. It's been a really remarkable year. And I look at some of the new team members that we've added in the last year. I look at some of the accomplishments that this group has made a priority. And it's easy. We do not do anything alone. If there's anything that comes before us as a council, we have the benefit of voting on it, but there's been hours, weeks, days, months, and even years worth of work that goes into bringing something forward to us to be able to make a decision. So I just wanted to talk about some of the great things for this year. As has already been mentioned, and a vote that we had tonight was the water lease with our San Carlos Apache Nation, and what great friends they have been to us. And my deepest gratitude for Chairman Rambler and for the remarkable way that he has led his nation. And it's been such a privilege to be there, to visit with him, to see the things that they've been doing, their Apache College, to preserve their culture and heritage. And these are things that in Gilbert we also hold dear. And the partnership that we've been able to build around water. And this is a relationship that will last, again, for generations. And that, to me, is true leadership. So I'm grateful for him and for the relationship that we've been able to build in the last 9 years since we started having these conversations. So nothing easy, but absolutely worth it. I also want to talk about the fact that we now have a university building tenant and how excited we are, and that there will be others to follow. We do have more community engagement than ever. When I look at the correspondence that our customer service department is having with residents, the digital engagement that we embark on with our digital team, the 311, the neighbor to neighbor, the next door, 44,000 households that we are engaging with on a regular basis. We are going to where the people are, and I think that shows a true commitment to service. We are on a new trajectory for our parks. We talked about Elliott District Park, but it was just a couple weeks ago that we broke ground on Southeast Regional and also on Rittenhouse. And again, two really important components of our community is our parks, and a lot of work. We've continued to pay down town debt, and we have the lowest secondary property tax in generations. That says something, that we've been able to accomplish so many things in that. Huge projects that are underway. Fire Station 9, the last of our 11 fire stations to be built that we did a groundbreaking on this year. A water treatment facility expansion. And we've added 4,900 plus jobs to the town of Gilbert in the last year. And when I say we in partnership with the business community who have worked so hard. I was trying to count up, but I'm estimating almost 100 ribbon cuttings this year. And that's a lot of ribbons. That's a lot of rolls of ribbon. I'm really incredibly proud, and I hope that each of our departments, I know they do, they quantify the work that they're doing, but what this means for the future of Gilbert. And just so proud to be part of this community, so proud to be working with each of you. Thank you for all of your hard work as a council, for the things that you're doing, and the fact that you're willing, so many of you are willing to run again and to help us continue this trajectory that we're on. I'm incredibly grateful. So with that, I think that for fiscal year 18, we are closing business, except for Patrick really has to say one more thing.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. I'd like to.
Is it nice? Are you going to say something nice?
It is
okay.
Nice. I'd like to call for an admonishment of our town attorney. I mentioned to him that I didn't want his ego to swell, and I didn't really mean the compliment I gave him earlier, and he responded that it's okay, he wasn't listening, and I just find that unacceptable.
We will make sure we include that in his evaluation next year. He may get a bonus based on his response to you, so hang tight. Thank you again, and thank you to everyone, and we'll see you August 3rd, or 2nd or 3rd. 2nd is the first part of our fiscal year 19. Thank you.